From 1950 to 1955, Tales from the Crypt delivered 27 issues of pure gleeful depravity to unsuspecting newsstands, guided by the cackle of that decomposing ghoul of ghouls, the Crypt-Keeper. Here are 15 of the most deranged and somewhat forgotten tales from EC's crown jewel of horror, ranked from merely disturbing to genuinely irreparable damage to your psyche. Let's get stuck in. Number 15, Scared to Death from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 24. A greedy schemer named Ralph marries a woman named Cora purely to get his grubby hands on her wealthy uncle's fortune. When waiting for the old man to die proves too tedious, Ralph ropes his wife into murdering the uncle, and then, once the money is secured, decides Cora herself has become too inconvenient. As it turns out, Uncle Alex has other plans from beyond the grave. Scared to Death is a tidy little masterclass in karmic evisceration. What makes it sting is how utterly banal Ralph's evil is. He's not a monster, he's just an especially motivated cheapskate. Wally Wood's crisp, almost cheerful artwork makes what happens to Ralph land almost comically, like a piano dropped straight on his head. Number 14, Seance from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 23. Alan Bitsby, a man with a tragically misplaced sense of scientific skepticism, attends a seance specifically to humiliate the medium conducting it. He demands the spirit of his departed wife be summoned, his quotation marks not the medium's, and is rewarded with contact far more authentic than he'd bargained for. As it turns out, being smug about the supernatural is the horror equivalent of saying it can't get any worse. Number 13, Voodoo Death from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 23. Two Americans, Jay and Bill, blunder their way into a forbidden voodoo ceremony in Haiti. Jay gets captured by the very people whose sacred rites he just crashed. When he eventually reunites with Bill and the two flee the island, Jay seems perfectly fine, but what happens next is something you'd least expect. Jack Davis's expressive art gives Alan's face exactly the kind of dawning horror that makes readers feel both satisfied and slightly queasy, which is precisely the EC sweet spot. Number 12, Bats in My Belfry from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 24. Stage actor Harry is going deaf, which in 1951 is career-ending. A friend points him toward a very unorthodox physician who offers an equally unorthodox solution: transplant the hearing organs of a bat into Harry's skull. Harry agrees to this without apparently asking many follow-up questions. He gets his super hearing back, along with a selection of other bat-adjacent qualities he didn't exactly sign up for, including the useful ability to hear his wife's private conversations with her lover. The story is a near-perfect specimen of EC's signature "be careful what you wish for" formula. Jack Davis draws Harry's gradual transformation with escalating grotesquerie, and the ending manages to be simultaneously poetic and absolutely revolting. Number 11, A Rotten Trick from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 29. A callous woman-using cad needs to skip the country after burning one relationship too many, and makes the catastrophic error of hiring a boat pilot whose emotional connection to the situation runs far deeper than our villain could have anticipated. The boat pilot, you see, had something of a prior relationship with the woman our villain so casually discarded. Specifically, she killed herself over what he did to her. Joe Orlando's artwork is wonderfully grim, and the story commits fully to its logic. This is a ghost story, yes, but also a story about how consequences travel. The reckoning arrives in the middle of open water, which EC correctly identified as the optimal location for having nowhere to run. Number 10, Reflection of Death, from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 23. Carl and his companion are driving down a dark road when headlights appear from the wrong direction and everything goes dark. Carl awakens disoriented and begins making his way home, but every person he encounters screams and flees in absolute terror at the sight of him. He cannot understand why strangers keep reacting to him as though he has crawled out of a nightmare. This one was significant enough to be adapted for the 1972 Amicus film, and for good reason. Al Feldstein wrote and drew this story himself, using a second-person narrative technique that puts the reader uncomfortably inside Carl's disintegrating perspective. The horror isn't a monster, it's a mirror, and what it reflects is the thing you least want to be. Number 9, Grounds for Horror, from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 29. Young Artie's stepfather, who's a butcher, is a weapons-grade bully who makes a habit of locking Artie in the closet as punishment. In the dark, Artie meets Hosea, who lives in the closet and has very specific ideas about what Artie's stepfather deserves. Loosely inspired by John Collier's short story Thus I Refute Beelzy, this tale weaponizes the innocence of childhood against the reader. Jack Davis draws Hosea with a brilliant ambiguity. Is he a monster, an imaginary friend, or something altogether more primordial? The stepfather's fate is presented with a cheerfulness that is, in retrospect, deeply unsettling. Number 8, Bargain in Death, from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 28. A man hatches what he considers a daring plan. Take a drug that simulates death convincingly enough to fool everyone, collect the insurance money, get dug up by his trusted partner, and live like a king. His trusted partner, predictably, intends to leave him underground, buried alive. What he doesn't account for, however, is 2 medical students who need a fresh corpse for their anatomy class. Based loosely on Ambrose Bierce's One Summer Night, it's the story that makes Buried Alive Panic entirely reasonable and probably convinced several readers to include extremely specific provisions in their wills. Number 7, Midnight Mess, from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 35. A man visits a small town to track down and murder his sister for her inheritance. When he gets there, he finds the streets empty at sundown, and the locals extremely cagey about the recent disappearance of 17 townspeople. He scoffs at the idea of vampires and decides to try the daily special at an after-dark restaurant. What the daily special is will ultimately seal his fate. I won't spoil it, but the ending is so horrible that it was adapted for the 1973 film The Vault of Horror. Joe Orlando's artwork on this one is borderline sadistic in its composition, and the story has the audacity to make you feel sorry for the villain, who almost deserved a better death. Number 6, The Living Death, from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 24. 2 doctors love the same woman. She develops a tumor on her heart, one operates and she dies, the other, years later, is in a car accident that leaves him clinically dead for nearly 3 months, but kept from decomposing by a post-hypnotic suggestion that won't release him until he hears a specific word. That word is Laurie, the name of the woman they both loved, the woman who died on the table. Inspired by Poe's The Facts in the Case of Ems Valdemar, Graham Ingalls' artwork captures the specific horror of a man who is technically alive, but very much the visual definition of a corpse. The story's cruelty posits a fate worse than death, and then makes you understand exactly how it would feel. Number 5, Accidents and Old Lace, from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 43. 3 elderly sisters create extraordinarily beautiful tapestries, their secret being that their finest work only happens when they witness violent deaths. An art dealer discovers this, and then decides the commercial opportunity is simply too good to pass up. He begins arranging suitable viewing experiences for the sisters. The sisters, for their part, remain creatively inspired right up until they find a new subject. Graham Ingalls, aka Ghastly Graham, illustrates this one with the tenderness of a man who genuinely loves what he does, which in this context is extraordinarily disturbing. The story frames murder as patronage of the arts, and the final panel's logic is so perfectly constructed that you're briefly impressed before you're absolutely horrified. Number 4, Hoodwinked, from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 44. A woman takes her own life after an assault by her fiancé's brother. The fiancé, consumed by grief and fury, responds to this by engineering a revenge that spans years, requires considerable planning, and results in an outcome for the perpetrator that makes the reader briefly reconsider the entire concept of justice. Another Graham Ingalls one. The horror is not supernatural, it's human, and EC's greatest trick was always understanding that people are considerably more inventive than any ghost or monster. The story was published in the final stretch of EC's run, when the Comics Code was already sharpening its knives, which makes its unflinching subject matter feel almost defiant. Number 3, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 34. A man builds a Frankenstein-style creature from assembled artificial parts, successfully transfers his own brain into it, and finds himself inhabiting a body of spectacular monstrousness. He wanders, seeking to understand what he has become, and stumbles into a carnival's hall of mirrors. The mirrors, unlike the world outside, are entirely honest with him. Riffing on both Lovecraft's The Outsider and Shelley's Frankenstein, this story poses the genuinely disturbing question: what if the most terrifying thing in the horror story is your own face? Jack Davis draws the carnival sequence with a funhouse energy that makes the climax land with the force of something much quieter and more permanent than a scream. Number 2, Lower Berth, from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 33. In this one, the Crypt-Keeper narrates his own origin story, which involves a travelling carnival's sideshow, a 4,000-year-old Egyptian mummy, and a two-headed corpse sharing a railway compartment. What follows is a bizarre love story. It's the most disturbing love story ever published in an American comic book. The sheer audacity of EC Comics deciding to give their undead mascot parents is a kind of creative insanity that deserves a monument. Jack Davis illustrates the whole thing with a demented enthusiasm that makes it even more wrong. It answers a question no one asked and creates approximately 40 new questions, none of which have comfortable answers. And last but not least, number 1, Midnight Snack, from Tales from the Crypt, issue number 24. Duncan Reynolds is up late reading horror stories when hunger strikes. He finds himself dizzy and disoriented standing in the street outside a restaurant, but the smell of cooking meat repulses him rather than tempting him. He experiences more dizzy spells. He wakes in a graveyard, shovel in hand, beside a disturbed grave and a partially consumed corpse. And it all goes downhill from there. This is EC at its most surgically precise. The horror here is not the act itself, it's the moment of recognition. The second when Duncan understands what he is and has been. Johnny Craig's artwork keeps the mundane and the monstrous at exactly the same visual temperature, so that the final image, domestic, quiet, and completely irredeemable, hits harder than any gore could manage. It's the story that proves the Crypt-Keeper was right. The most terrifying thing is always the monster you didn't know you'd become. There you go, everyone. 15 stories that the Comics Code Authority tried to bury. The genius of Tales from the Crypt was never its monsters, it was its people. Greedy, jealous, violent, small-minded people getting exactly what they deserved in ways that the Crypt-Keeper found absolutely hilarious. That's the punchline. that never gets old. Anyway, that's it for now. Please like, subscribe, and chuck us a hype. See you guys next time for the next episode.